and welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. This is episode 177. I'm Aaron, and with me, as always, is the rest of the Who Dat Jedi Council, Dave and Fredo. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Happy post-Halloween. I hope everybody was treated good by the Great Pumpkin, and so yeah. Anyway,
Good
It
time.
was, yeah, it was kind of quiet on my neck of the woods just because of the cold and cold wind. Nobody wants kids getting sick.
yeah. I mean the temperature would have been all right. It's the wind that made everything cruddy. So anyway, so yeah, well, tonight we're going to cut right to the chase, everybody, because tonight we are going to be watching Return of the Jedi. So you can, we haven't done a commentary on this one at all. You can open up Disney Plus or fire up your Blu-ray or whatever, get out your VHS tape. We're all watching the one on Disney Plus. So, just so you know, but get it queued up to where it says a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And we will all hit play and we'll start commenting away. So everybody, are the two of you ready?
Ready.
And on count of three, 1, 2, 3,
go. 4,
5, sir. Oh, yeah.
3.
Gosh darn it. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah. So, so how old was everybody when Return of the Jedi came out? I was 10. Yeah, 10. So
6.
You're 6.
I was 4.
So, oh man. So we're all giving away our ages. I remember, I've said it before. I remember, like when the elementary school bookmobile would, come and they like had a Return of the Jedi
I was
thing.
6 too. I'm sorry. My math's terrible. I was 6.
But the Return of the Jedi, like some Return of the Jedi book came out before the movie was released. I remember seeing the Death Star and seeing some of the stuff and being so excited for this movie. I remember and of course I was, I think 10 is about the right age to be really excited about Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Yeah.
the 6 to 10. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I mean, I was like, for 2 years I was reading Dynamite magazine that said, "Is Darth Vader Luke Skywalker's father?" So this was the first one that I remember just being really pumped about.
Yeah,
I think
it's
as far
interesting.
as... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I remember I didn't get to see this movie till I was in visiting family in Guatemala, which must have been 1985. So really, I didn't see it till I was age 8, which is why I think it hit right, went right through me, just got me at the right moment. But I think there's something to that point where I think if you catch it too young, you may not get, make a sense of it. If you catch it too old, you might be too cool for school. So that age group, say, like 7 to about 10, 11, probably the prime age for it to hit you right in all the feels.
And I love this opening shot with the Star Destroyer and the shuttle. The shuttle was the coolest thing. I want to go digging into some like news clippings and did like the old people in 1983, did they get really ticked off that there was just another Death Star? Were they mad that it was a rehash? I remember at 10 years old, I was like, oh my gosh, they made a new Death Star. You know what I mean? I want to know if there were net nerds back then, would they have been mad that there was a second Death Star? Or were they mad?
I don't remember when I became annoyed by the concept, but eventually at some point I did, I think in my adolescence, and it was a little much for me. But again, I watched this movie for the first time when I was so young that I don't even remember my first viewing at all of this movie. The only thing I remember is that I was obsessed with it. It's like it like seeped into my brain like immediately and then was just there. All the toys, all the merchandise, merchandise, you know, everything. And it was because of this movie more so than the other two. And but yeah, but oddly enough, I don't remember going to the theater to watch this. I'm pretty sure we must have because VHS was still sort of out there. We didn't have a VHS player for a while. Might have watched it on HBO. I don't know.
Pretty sure my first viewing was in, pardon me, South Dakota with my dad. I was on a business trip with him, and we went to see it. So I remember getting a Wicket T-shirt at the mall. Um, I loved the the shot here of all the stormtroopers and everything when Vader arrives, the pomp and circumstance that there is, and then later when the Emperor goes in there. But I mean, this is also the first time that we get a hint of the Emperor being frightening to somebody because the Emperor is coming. It's like the boss is coming in, but it's more than that. So it's just a neat little beginning to this movie.
It's one thing that I noticed too is that Vader's pomp is much less than the Emperor's. He has much
Mm-hmm.
less ego to impress.
Well, I'm sure what. Okay, so this is our head canon. Would that be, is it his ego or is it the Emperor's ego saying that
Oh,
he only gets a squad, whereas I get an entire garrison, whatever. I don't know.
yeah.
What it is, I think, in a certain way, there, the Imperial Army is accustomed to seeing Vader coming and going because he's the Emperor's right hand, whereas the Emperor primarily stays in Coruscant. It's the difference between, say, Secretary of State or Defense traveling to
Sure.
somewhere on the globe versus the president showing up. All of a sudden, you have to do, or somebody of that nature. It's and triple so for Emperor Palpatine, who loves showmanship. So
It's those
yeah,
little details, though, right? Like they get those things right. Like
Yeah.
they're just the fact that they realized when they were making this movie, it's like, well, no,
We
the
wouldn't have as many
Emperor's
guys. Yeah.
turnout should be much bigger.
So, and now we're back on Tatooine. And did the net nerds get really mad in 1983 that we're back on Tatooine, or is it just because we've gone to Tatooine so many times since then? I don't know. Um, but again, I remember not caring. I mean, it made sense because we talked about Jabba the Hutt back in the the first movie, and that was on
well,
Tatooine, so it made sense that we're there.
and if you remember, Empire Strikes Back ends with Luke saying, "I'll meet you at the rendezvous point on Tatooine."
Yeah.
So we're already being led to believe we're gonna have to go back there at some point. And this is where it
Yeah,
ends.
yeah, I don't recall it bothering me. But I think part of the reason too is it's so different. I mean,
Mhm.
like, 6-year-old me may not have even put it together that this was the same planet if I wasn't paying super close attention.
Well, and hasn't George Lucas always and everybody's always said these movies are for kids? So it's
Hmm.
like if you make things too big, then it's difficult to grasp. It's like keep them in places that are familiar. Then you can introduce new stuff in familiar places. Um, I love this little interaction. Gift? What gift? 3PO is out of the loop. Um,
I also think, in a certain way, kind of like you're saying about the quote unquote the net nerds. I mean, geek and nerd culture existed back then, no doubt, but the internet has allowed it to coalesce, and a lot of the similar opinions find their way, whether they're good or the bad. I think also, just by the nature of this being, I always look at Jedi as the moment where I think George kind of figured out the formula. Like
Yeah.
Star Wars, the first Star Wars was just experimental, shot in the dark. We'll figure it out. We'll sort it out as we're going along. And then the second one was all about proving that it wasn't just a one-time fluke, and it went dark and it went serious. And I think this is the one where they finally kind of find the balance between the silliness and the seriousness, between all the otherworldliness that George wants to put into this stuff, and kind of like you said, the touchstones that you have to build for the audience so that they don't feel like they're lost in the middle of all this. So I always look at Jedi as, and on top of that, all the merchandise. This one, if you didn't have a Return of the Jedi lunchbox, action figure, T-shirt, you skip 1983.
I think the one thing too, I love this idea. I've written about this idea. You can check it out on my blog, but like I think we'll circle back to this. This is just like, yeah, this is where they're innovating their way into formula here. They've
Mhm.
got all these new problems that they're trying to solve that they've most of them of their own making, with visual effects, etc. But again, it's like we're beginning to see the outline here now. You're beginning to see like, oh, okay, so you're gonna have the monster attack. You're gonna have the big finale where you're jumping from place to place across multiple characters' perspectives. Um, it's not quite formulaic, but like we're trending that way. And I think like when people get like hung up on Star Wars needing to be a certain way, they're probably thinking about this particular stretch of films, Empire, Return of the Jedi, Phantom Menace, um, all really similar to each other in structure.
So we just, pardon me, we just saw Luke in hologram form. And I remember 10-year-old Aaron was just as, and 50-year-old Aaron are still of the same mind that the character of the portrayal of Luke was like a dramatic shift. It's just almost to the, I mean, because, he was kind of, kind of a hothead in the first two, and then all of a sudden he's a priest, and it's like what happened here? You know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
and it almost makes me feel like is it, and it's kind of like, for him to say, I'm a Jedi, and later on Yoda laughs at him, and so everybody laughs at him every time he says he's a Jedi. Is he like, I have to pretend like I'm a Jedi, so I have to, it's like, I'm a teacher now. I must wear a tie. I don't know. And by the way, the droid like screaming because the hot plate is hitting its feet is that upsets 50-year-old Aaron. Anyway, go ahead.
I was gonna say, who's the one person who does not laugh at Luke when he says, "I'm a Jedi"?
That's
Palpatine.
Palpatine. Yeah. Gets
Yeah.
ticked. Um,
I think it's the thing about that too that I'm right there with you. It's a dramatic shift, and I know that like part of what you're after here in the opening sequences when you first see him is we're cluing you into the fact that Luke could turn to the dark side.
yeah. I mean, even the
His
visual aspect, he's
his
all
yeah,
black.
his
Yeah.
outfit, the fact that he's choking people, the fact that he's like out here like wailing people and destroying things. It's just like, okay, broadcasting that to the audience that this is a possibility. Um, so that when you get to the end of the movie, it's a more dramatic sequence. But like to your point though, this is sort of an awkward shift for him. He's much more serious, like you said. He's almost a religious figure. I actually really sort of, even though I don't like the effects so much, I do sort of appreciate the new appearances of Luke that we've gotten in Mando and Book of Boba Fett, um, because at least it sort of offers more
Yeah.
of that character in that space so that you get a little more used to it, I think. Oh, yes.
Oh, good.
Now it's time for. I mean, I am generally in favor of the special editions, except for Jedi Rocks. This was just awful. Um,
Well, particularly because it brings the entire movie to a screeching halt. Like this neither advances the plot, nor world builds, nor does anything that
it didn't make
makes
the
it
movie
interesting. I mean, you
better.
just
It didn't make the movie
exactly.
better. It's like, I get that you were dealing with Muppets, but I mean, it just did not make the movie any better. Loppy Neck was just fine,
But
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 we need to
but
make
then
this a video
also, I mean,
podcast.
look at the scene we just had where 3PO and R2 being taken to the droid, overseer. by the guards, and they're torturing the gunk droid and whatnot. Not a single human character in that environment, and yet that felt appropriate. Nobody's laughing at the effects. Everybody's either in costume or in or the practical effect. And it works. And again, it doesn't bring them. It doesn't do what Jedi Rock does, which is okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's slam on the brakes and have a musical interlude. No, here's your special guest, Foo Fighters.
And showing Ula in the Rancor pit did nothing as well. And it's like what we talked about last week. I think about the Hitchcock nature of Star Wars. Like when she went into the pit in the original, and all you heard was a roar and people gasping. It was like, your
Mhm.
imagination was getting the better. Now that I mean, I don't know. It was again didn't really need to. Um, and it's 83 because Chewbacca has a lot of Aquanet in his hair. So
Well, we're back to what I was talking about briefly earlier, which is that they've created problems for themselves, and then they have to solve the problem that they themselves created. And that's what George did here with Jedi Rocks. He created this awkward shift in tone, and it's like, oh no, we got to shift back to watching Ula get murdered. So it's like, uh, okay, so we'll add a scene so it's not quite so jarring a thing. And it's like, well, if you had just sort of left all that alone, you wouldn't have had that issue.
And sorry, we always got to remember that the special editions are the proof of concept for the prequels. So
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that he's throwing in here is saying, can I do this now? Can I build entirely CGI characters, splice them into stuff that was shot on a set with real live actors and props, and can I have it work? So I always remember back to seeing a special edition going, oh, this is neat, this is neat. But you're right, there's a lot of stuff in here that feels like would really, it doesn't help the movies themselves, but that it's almost like George testing out whether or not he can do stuff. And I'm like, I'm not necessarily against that as a concept, but I am when it takes away from the enjoyment of the finished product that you're putting on the screen. Because ultimately, this has to live on its own.
I will say two shout outs. I've mentioned these books before on this podcast. Tales from Jabba's Palace. It's a Legends thing. It's little vignettes of all the different characters in Jabba's palace. Really, just kind of like from a certain point of view. Cool book. Also, Shadows of the Empire. Sorry, I dug that book, and especially linking it. It helps to explain how Leia got this bounty hunter outfit. Um, just bridges that gap between Empire and Jedi, which I mean, kind of an important gap. But so like I said, just a couple of good books that I think just kind of make this whole. By the way, I do want to say one thing, one criticism. Um,
Mhm.
we spend an awful lot of time in Jabba's palace in this movie. You
I
know,
mean, which is
when
kind
people
of part of. Mhm.
people no sorry people talk about the lack of cutaways in Ahsoka. It's like, can we talk about Return of the Jedi here? Because it's like every see we just have to see the frog eat the worm outside Jabba's palace so we can have more stuff happening in Jabba's palace. Anyway, spent a lot of time here.
But I also think what's interesting about this movie is that it's having to pay off a lot of stuff that was introduced in the first two,
Yeah,
particularly Empire. Like we know that there's a criminal underworld from meeting Han Solo and Chewbacca at the cantina, and knowing that there's smugglers, and knowing that there's this Prime Lord Jabba looking for him, but he's got to pay off. That get further discussed in Empire. So much the same way, kind of like the Emperor's finally getting paid off here with his full presence. You kind of have to have built up the idea of Jabba and what a threat, bad guy he is. So it makes sense. You are right, though. From the moment we see 3PO and R2 heading towards his palace till this gets resolved, this is the entire movie. There's nothing else happening.
and by the way,
That
can we
is weird.
can we talk about how the leader of the rebellion and the future general and leader of the resistance bangs into wind chimes when she's sneaking in, breaking into the crime lord's palace? I mean, Anyway,
Not her best moment.
no. Um,
So I like Boosh, right? That's the name of the character,
I
or
always
the
said
big
Bausch.
Bausch,
I don't know.
Boosh. Um, I like the whole design of it, and I
Yep.
like that sequence with the thermal detonator
First time we
and
ever hear
how.
the words thermal detonator, by the way.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, there you go. And I like I always picked up on this jealousy from Boba Fett, where
Yeah.
he's like, "I like this bounty hunter," Jabba's like raving about how great this new bounty hunter is, and Boba's just like, What are you doing here?" And I
Well,
was I was like that moment, but just to circle back to Boba Fett, like going out like a bee here soon, um, and that build up from Empire, and for a lot of people, is a huge disappointment. But I guess I'm putting the cart before the horse.
no, but I was gonna say it creates an interesting dynamic because uh, Boba Fett's kind of top dog because he brought in Han Solo, but Bausch or Bush is bringing in Chewbacca, who everybody knows is the real muscle in that operation. If you're gonna take on one,
Yeah.
you take on Han because Han's the human. Chewie's the hard one to get, and this guy got her. This being got it, and now, surprise, surprise! Somehow the biggest crime lord in the galaxy snuck up on everybody.
It should be like to your point. It should be a good sell that
Hmm.
like she took down Chewbacca. Okay, but they
How do you
immediately
think?
sniff it out, and
Well, that's the thing. How do you think? How do you think Jabba? Well, we don't spend too much time. How do you think Jabba figured everything out? I mean, was it hitting the wind chimes? Somebody's breaking in? I don't think so. Um, it's one of those
Well, I
things.
mean,
It's one of those things where I was thinking about this just a few minutes ago when we first saw R2. Well, no, when they took R2 and 3PO down to Eve 99 and said fit this one with a restraining bolt. It's like I'm thinking, man, how stupid is Jabba to not like plug R2 into something and figure out what he's got in his memory banks? Maybe he did. Maybe
mhm.
we could write a book about that. Maybe he got some intel, off of that. Um, so
To your point, no, but to your point, right quick, just think about it. We just saw one of the leaders of the Rebel Alliance in the hands of a notorious crime lord by her own choice, by her own actions. Which, if you're in the Rebel Alliance, you're like, wait a minute, what the heck are you doing? Let us send some people in who can get Han out. You don't need to go, but here she is, joining the pack.
this scene between Chewie and Han is just I love this scene.
mm,
I mean,
I,
it's you know, best friends reunited. It's
I,
it's the first time you see. Well, no, it's the second time. The first time you see, Chewie's love for his friend was in Empire, and now it's even more so here. So
I always call that scene that you get back home after a long trip and your dog's there to greet you.
nobody tried to ship Chewbacca and Han. Just saying. So now things get interesting here. Here we get Luke coming into um, Jabba's palace, and I don't know if it hit me. I don't know if it hit me in first viewing that I mean it was obvious he was choking the Gamorrean guards, but I didn't know. I don't know if I went like he shouldn't be doing that.
Hmm.
right?
I don't know if I thought
Yeah.
that. I don't know if I thought it was like Jedi shouldn't be doing that. Um,
It might be because they're animalistic a little bit. These pig-looking dudes. They don't look human, and that makes it maybe a little less.
and by the way, I'm
I don't know,
sorry. The other
real.
thing, 10-year old Aaron didn't mind Princess Leia in the gold bikini, but 50-year-old Aaron is like going, yeah, I probably didn't need that. But anyway,
Point I'll say to that is there's a reason it became so iconic.
but
Because
Dave,
I think there's a whole generation of 10-year-old Aarons who never got over it.
Dave, to your point, maybe I mean maybe it's that you're saying that they're animals, so maybe it's not that big a deal. Is that kind of what you were saying? The pig
I think
guards,
to a 10-year-old, maybe.
yeah, maybe. But
Just
it was obvious though to 10-year-old Aaron that oh my gosh, Luke's a lot stronger because he's choking people and he's using Jedi mind tricks. Um, so um, and Salacious Crumb, I love Salacious Crumb as well. Just
Mhm. I want to think back. I want to say if it was Empire of Dreams or not. That Luke, I mean, or Mark Hamill, I'm sorry, was suggesting to George about how by this movie he should have like a giant star, he should look battle hardened, he should look like he's been through some stuff, and yet George didn't quite go that far with the character, which is interesting because, I mean, both Mark and Harrison had their own ideas for their characters. Harrison thought Han should be staying in carbonite forever, and Mark's thinking, no, no, make me tough, make me look like a tough dude. And they don't for either.
it has always hit me that he seems extremely cocky in this scene. I was, and again, is that to Dave's
Like his
point
dad.
about, is that no, to Dave's point about, he could turn to the dark side. I mean, that's not a very Jedi. Well, I guess Obi-Wan's kind of cocky in the Clone Wars. So, I mean,
Like I said, like his dad, like Anakin. I mean, because Anakin's quite cocky throughout the prequels, the Clone Wars, everything, every bit of it. Wait, what was he reaching for the blaster there? What was he thinking of doing?
probably going to shoot
Oh,
Jabba.
I guess.
I mean,
Is that a Jedi thing?
well, I mean, I, yeah, that's the thing is that always has bothered me actually is that, I'm a Jedi master, but why? Who died made you Pope? You know what I mean? It's like,
As it turns out, it is a bluff. He's not there yet. He was just saying that, and then when he goes and he talks to Yoda after, we find out
yeah.
that.
I mean,
But
the whole thing here is just, yeah, just using anything they can to get Han. Um, okay,
they threw everything against the wall,
so
right?
let's
Like literally, like this is like a plate of spaghetti. They're like, we're gonna send in Lando, we're gonna send in Leia, we're gonna send in the droids, I guess we're gonna eventually send in Luke. If none of that works, and then we're gonna try for a blaster, and if that doesn't work, then we're gonna fight the Rancor. It's just like the plan here sucks.
So looking at the Rancor and Jabba, and well, especially the Rancor, because the Rancor was shot in stop motion. Why does that from 1983 look so much better than the sand thing from Book of Boba Fett that reminded us all of Clash of the Titans or whatever?
Oh, I loved the sand thing.
but
Yes.
but it looked like it was filmed in 1962. It just was. It just, I don't know if people don't do stop motion very well anymore because it's not I mean, that was Phil Tippett's thing. But I don't know. This just looks. I mean, it's still, yes, you can tell it's a puppet, but it looks good.
And I also think, I mean, this is one of the things where the special editions, really came to the rescue. They did such a good job of recognizing, because obviously this is a live action shot of an actor in a set, and then they're transposing, putting on top
No.
this stop motion animation,
Oh yeah, you're talking
from this
Luke running
creature.
around.
So
Okay, yeah.
right, right, exactly. But and if you remember seeing it in the movie theaters in '83, it did have that Ray Harryhausen feel.
Oh, it did.
Whereas by 1997, the computer technology has gotten to the point where they can kind of splice it and fix it in such a way so that it looks more natural. And obviously, every time it's made a jump to another medium, they've cleaned it up a little bit, so it always looks a little bit better. But I also think it's just simply they took the time and care back then because they knew there was going to be limitations. Whereas now, maybe the computer technology allows them to think they can fix everything in post.
My memories of this movie and the special effects in this movie were, wow, those are really incredible for me, 6-year-old guy. By the time
Mhm.
I was a teenager, they didn't hold up. And you could see like outlines, like the Rancor, we were just talking about, oh, that looks great, right? You could see
But
a black outline
Yeah.
around the Rancor at all times in the original
mhm.
um, effects, and they cleaned that up. So
Uh,
Hooray
I,
Special Edition for that.
yeah, I was
By
gonna,
go ahead, Fredo.
no, I was just gonna say, I remember Rick McCallum saying that during the special edition DVD, saying how much time they had to take because so many, particularly Empire and Jedi, special effects are done in daylight, and how much harder it is to do all these composite shots, all these special effects when you're either doing it in the snow or in the brightness. We know if you're shooting stuff in space, you can hide those black outlines. You can't really do that if everybody's standing in a desert or in the snow.
Love the banter between Han and Luke, and 3PO giving their sentence and everything like that. And I feel that's what they were trying to go for in Rise of Skywalker, but
And Attack of the
it was
Clones,
like too
right?
little too late for Rise of Skywalker because they separated everybody so much. I don't know.
Well, this to your point, yes, because we introduce all three of them in A New Hope, and yes, they get separated in Empire, but because they've already established a relationship to the point that Han is willing to die rescuing Luke, and Luke is willing to risk his own life to come back and rescue Han and Leia, you come to see them as okay, they know each other, they're friends. Unfortunately, Force Awakens did not bring all three together. They just had either Finn and Poe or Finn and Rey. Likewise, Last Jedi did the same thing. Actually, Last Jedi kept them all three apart, and then it's not till Rise of Skywalker, and you can't just build that banter. People are not going to believe that you built that banter like that.
You can guarantee that if I built an R2 droid, that I would have the bar set up on his shoulders. R2D2 serving drinks was like the most awesome thing.
We can sell
Art,
it for you at Droid Depot.
R2 gets a lot of fun stuff in the opening few scenes here, and I liked that you were talking about earlier in the hallway where he was all spooked when he was dealing with Jabba's assistant, and it was I remember the bad lip reading,
yeah.
stranger danger. I loved that so much. I swear to God, Jabba's drinking a Pepsi here. I don't. It looks like a
Mhm.
Pepsi to me.
Well,
I don't know why.
man, they made him. They took him to the creepy level by getting all up in Leia's business. I just love that. What are you doing?
Oh
I'm
yeah,
serving drinks. Well, of course you're serving drink. I mean, like R2's like, dude, duh. All right, now we're getting to Aaron's complaint. All right, no, no.
the
Before
beak.
you complain, right there, just right quick. Speaking about Jabba's creepiness, where do you think he had? Did he have that gold bikini outfit just waiting for Leia to drop
Well, we'll
by?
talk about another outfit later on that it's
Yeah, exactly.
always wondered
Because
about.
everybody, Princess Leia might be coming by. Have something ready for her.
So
Yeah, the whole thing is weird. He's weird and creepy, but I guess that's the point, right? He's supposed to be weird and creepy, and then
So when she does what she does,
so
Snoke
let's
took up the mantle in the
yeah.
sequel trilogy from him.
So let's talk about because I love again. I just love the banter of Han Solo, yelling at Jabba and everything. But all right, so the deleted scene of Luke building his lightsaber and putting it into R2, that everybody thinks should have been left in the movie, and I think if you would have done that, it would have taken away this incredible moment. Because again, 10-year-old Aaron was over the moon
mhm,
when you see the lightsaber pop out of R2's dome, and then the fight ensues. If we know it's there, then we're waiting for it the whole time. We don't, we know that Luke's going to be saved. We know that he's got an ace in the hole type of a thing. I don't know. Where do you guys stand? Should that scene have been left in?
I could see where you could kind of film it or cut it before you you show R2 right next to him. So you don't have to show that what he's, where he is, what he's doing. But at the same time, I also think I agree with you. I think this moment plays a heck of a lot better if you don't know what's coming, if you don't know why R2's there, when it's not to see the lightsaber in the air and Luke back doing a backflip in order to, grab it as it gets to him. The music swells. It's just like, okay, this is what you came here for, and the moment works perfectly. So I wouldn't get rid of it. And meanwhile, we're coming up to probably Dave's point of contention.
Well, it wasn't even that bad for me personally, but I know a lot of people build him up and then he's like nothing, right? He gets taken out by a
You're talking
blend
about
and
Boba Fett. So
yeah.
for those of you not what, yeah, yeah. I was going to ask that question as well. Do you think that they could have given Boba Fett a little bit better of an
They
exit?
could
I
have done
mean,
a lot of things differently here. They nerfed most of the heroes. They just took them off the board, right?
yeah,
Han's blind, Chewie's injured,
Lando's
Lando's
dangling.
useless.
Yeah,
Yeah, dangling in over a pit. Um, it's Luke and Leia's show,
holy cow!
And
Sorry,
which
really,
we're gonna pause.
works.
We're gonna pause real quick. The Pelicans are beating the Pistons 72-49 at halftime. Anyway, keep going. Um,
It's Luke and Leia's show, for better or
yeah,
worse.
but
Um,
and I think that's by design, Dave. I think that the idea there is to show how strong Luke has got in the Force, that he is a Jedi and everything but name, so that he can take on this and kind of show you all he can do. Because normally, you're right. Normally, this would be Han be involved, Chewie be
well,
involved, Lando be involved, and they're all this off in their little corner trying to sort out how to avoid getting eaten alive.
so let's throw some controversy into this then. To that point, Dave, you said they kind of nerfed all the heroes. Let's just talk about one in particular, Han Solo. Throughout
mhm,
this whole movie, should
yeah,
they have just flat out killed him off and made him a sacrifice in Empire like Harrison Ford wanted? Would that have been more powerful to the story? Because really, in Return of the Jedi, he's piloting a ship and he's, you know, not really an effective leader on Endor later. I mean, he's part of the fight, but I mean, you know what I mean? I don't mean to
Mhm.
make any Han Solo fans mad, but, would it have been better for his character development to make him a sacrifice?
I liked seeing him sort of cast aside his past and have that opportunity to.
Sure.
I mean, he'd already previously sort of redeemed himself, right? And that's the storyline. But like, he goes even further with it here as a scoundrel capable of love, and
That's a good
he
point.
is. And I like that whole story between the two of them. I thought that was nice, and I've always thought it was nice. I don't. I Yeah. I always thought Harrison was nuts for that. I mean, I sort of get it, but like, the kids love this character. For most people who watched A New Hope the very first time, you either adopted Luke or Han as your guy,
Hmm.
and I was a Han kid. And
Yeah, I
so,
was too.
like, for
Yeah.
them to just like kill him off, you're alienating like a not half your audience because they were all the Leia girls, um, but you know a third of your audience. You're alienating a third of your audience that was identified with Han and loved Han. That's no good.
So just right quick, we just as we see them kind of getting away finally. Um, yeah, I love the little callback to the swinging Luke and Leia did in A New Hope across the chasm. They call back to that here
Well, it was
as they get
also
away.
very pirate genre. This
Yeah,
was
yeah, no.
Errol
Again,
Flynn.
it's
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Captain Blood stuff, right? But to that question, I kind of see what you're coming from, Aaron. In terms of you're right. In this movie, in terms of his actions, he's really
and full
writing.
disclosure, I'm
He's not
not
even
saying
writing.
they should have. I was just stirring
No,
the
no,
pot.
no,
So
no, no. But I'm saying is, he's not even writing shotgun. He's in the back of the car.
yeah,
Luke is driving the story, and Leia is riding shotgun. Uh, but at the same time, I do. I mean, I like the character. I love the journey that he goes through, kind of like David say. I, I always felt like they try to build a mystery in this movie about maybe one of them would die because they
Right.
did later on. We're going to get that little interaction between him and Lando, and I think there was a point where they thought maybe Lando and the Millennium Falcon would die, destroying the Death Star, kind of redeeming him for his betrayal in Empire. And so that idea that any one of them could have died at the end, it's kind of intriguing. So, but at the same time, I would hate to have missed out on this character because I think maybe Harrison felt like he didn't have anything to contribute, but he, his charm and his personality is needed to balance everything else out. Like this right here with finally getting to meet Palpy.
And by the way, can we back up a second? When that
Mhm.
opening shot where you see the shuttle in the landing bay, the the way ILM uses or used matte paintings was incredible. Just saying. I mean that shot
Mhm.
looks like it was filmed on location. It was a matte painting. Um, so yeah, the entrance of the Emperor. This was kind of a cool deal again to 10-year-old Aaron. It was like, wow. I mean, but I wonder how it plays to somebody who's now seen episode one, episode one, two, three, all of Clone Wars, and that's the thing is like
Well,
so where is that shock value, replaced? You know what I mean? For us, it was Return of the Jedi. Um, but anyway, I have a more important thing, another bit of controversy here because we're on Dagobah now, and before we logged on to record this, I told Brittany and I were talking. We were eating dinner. And she said, "What are you guys talking about on the podcast?" And I said, "Well, we're watching Return of the Jedi." I said, "You know what?" She said, "I got a question." I said, "How come everybody gets on Luke in, or gets on the fact that that Ryan Johnson had Luke, well, and I guess J.J. Abrams as well. Luke run away to an island, give up, and run away. But nobody gets on Yoda for giving up and running away to Dagobah." She said, because that's exactly what he did. He didn't fight. He could have joined the fight. He stayed hidden and didn't do anything except, have Skype calls with Ezra every now and again, or, you know, but that is an interesting thing. Again, it's like nobody faults Yoda for what he did. And he's probably the greatest of all Jedi masters, but by gosh, you do it with Luke, and you know, again, I guess
I think
I'm
the diff
defending the Last Jedi again. So
no, I think, and it's an excellent point. It's an excellent question. I think it comes down to the difference of we've only ever until the prequels we had only ever seen Yoda here in Dagobah. So we always assumed that he's like existed here or that he was here and that you know, this is his natural habitat. Whereas with Luke, we've seen him be rebellious, be confrontational, be more direct in his actions, like running off to face off the danger. Um, and that so that juxtaposition where we get to see him in Last Jedi, it kind of created a divergence in our mind as to who this character was, which to me was never an issue. It's just this is the same character now with 30 years of guilt. So
if I would give you an A plus on that, Fredo, if it wasn't for the fact that they filmed episodes one, two, and three, and shot all of the Clone Wars, you know, before they made the Last Jedi. So
mhm,
it's like,
There's a hypocrisy in the critique
and
from
that is the
mhm.
thing.
yeah.
I just it's kind of like, if you're annoyed by Jar Jar, were you annoyed by C3PO? If you are, it's, and I still think it's an age thing, but anyway.
Mhm,
um
mhm. Like I said, I think it's down to where we first met the character. We tend to uh, assume that a character has always existed in the environment which we first meet him, much the same way we tend to assume people are from wherever they're at when we met them, not knowing their entire life's journey, so to speak.
If somebody has a problem with Yoda in the same way that they did Luke in Last Jedi, then I would say, well, at least you're consistent.
right.
But again, acknowledging Fredo's point, this problem did not exist until George made the prequels. this, you know, in this movie, he's just a guy living in a swamp.
Right.
That's all he is.
Right.
Um, and now because of Revenge of the Sith, he's like a coward or something. Um, but again, like I think you're trying to make the opposite point, which is that neither of them are cowards. Both of them understand that their part in this story is
Well,
different than being on the front lines.
there the thing that I mean the point is that people and I suppose whatever creature Yoda is, people are fallible. People,
That too.
nobody is perfect. I think that's the point we're trying to make. And it's like when you try to, you know, the perfect character is also very boring, you know? So, um, I don't know, and I also think about this, it was necessary to give this reveal, but I think by the time I saw Return of the Jedi, it was like kind of, I guess I came to the, okay, you know, yeah, Vader's Luke's father. I don't know.
You kind of
Well,
needed it
okay,
too. You
so
needed.
I don't know. It was, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
well, this whole scene he's talking about the last of the Jedi will you be? Do we want to open up that can of worms
Right. When he
because of
says
all of
there's
the new
another,
stuff? Yeah, and there is another. Who's he talking about? It's like, oh, Leia? Is it Ezra? Is it Ahsoka? Is it? It's we're getting to a point of ridiculousness
well,
in
that's
a way.
why the from a certain point of view, Empire Strikes Back, the conversation between Yoda and Obi-Wan, and Yoda just being ticked off that he wanted to train Leia. He wanted Leia to be trained, not Luke, and that's just such an interesting little vignette there. Um, by the way, Yoda's death here, it's just so well done. The music is great at this point. Um,
What I love about it is that it's such a small moment. It's not this grandiose uh, reveal of force, of power. It's not even because we're going to see a later death that has a gigantic whoosh of energy, goes along with it to kind of bring a finality to him that somehow no way could anybody return from it. But
Somehow,
Yoda's somehow, yeah. But yet Yoda's is very much just a tranquil,
peaceful. Yeah.
peaceful transition from living to being one with the Force, which I think, in some ways, if you're talking about the death of a character that's beloved, probably better when you're talking about, particularly for kids. There's everybody remembers Bambi's death because it was so sudden and so ugly. This is probably the best way to do it to get kids to understand that he's gone, but not do it in a way that's going to traumatize them.
And here is where Obi-Wan says the line that just, I think, started retconning from what I told you is true from a certain point of view. And Luke's reaction, I think, was everybody's reaction. And by the way, I do want to say, really, does a Force ghost need to sit down on a log? But anyway, but
The actor playing him does
I
out of this nonsense.
they did such a good job, I guess. Well, I mean, they were obviously making up this story as they went. I don't. If again, I come back to if Luke and Leia were honestly brother and sister from the get go, there's no way in heck that George Lucas would have let Irvin Kershner film as deep of a kissing scene as they did in Empire Strikes Back. There's no way.
right?
Um, so I don't know.
And a lot of this backstory is made up as they go along. Um, and again, you talk to this idea of, well, okay, we did this thing, so now we have to do this other thing. You sort of paint yourself into these corners, and when you talk about the execution of the prequels, and if you're not a fan of what we got, I'd say go back and watch some of this dialogue in these three first movies because it's all there, and George is like, I got to do it this way, and I gotta make sure I fulfill this part of it. He's got to be a good pilot. Obi-Wan has to be the one that trains him. Like all these sorts of check boxes, and there were other choices that could have been made, other creative decisions that could have been made ultimately, but um, this is this is where this is the start of it. This is the
uh,
genesis of this.
I also like the I can't remember who said it originally, but when he said that's why your sister remains safely anonymous. Leia's my sister.
Yeah,
Oh, your insight serves you well. Well, that and she's the only woman in this movie. So, in any of these movies, um,
yeah. Imagine if Ben had said, "Well, your sister is a Twilight dancer at Jabba's palace. Go rescue her." They would be like, "Ooh,
Ooh,
so
that wouldn't have been good. No, they had to though, right? Because of exactly what you said. Like, she's the only main female character. Once you have that reveal, it's like, well, okay, yeah, fine, okay, you guessed it,
and we've established that there was a bit of a rivalry between Han and Luke for Leia, and we need a resolution that has everybody happy.
right?
So
Resolved.
no, it's resolved.
Mon
I
Mothma.
Well, we really don't talk. I mean, I know we mentioned it during Andrew, but Catherine O'Reilly, I'm sorry, Genevieve O'Reilly, the actress who plays Mon Mothma now, she has done such a tremendous job with that character. Because this is the only moment we see Mon Mothma in all the movies,
right,
and she's expanded the heck out of that character.
expanded the heck out of it, and also kept this character consistent.
Hmm.
So, watching Return of the Jedi, it doesn't throw you off.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, did a good
Hmm.
job, like I said, at keeping it consistent. Um, by the way, friend of mine, best friend, and through elementary through high school, one of my best friends. One Halloween, he dressed as Admiral Akbar and had it was an awesome costume. It probably was 1983 or 84 maybe, but yeah, um, he had
Was
all.
he saying the line a lot of the time, or it was it even a thing at that point?
I don't know if it was a thing at that point, but anyway, no, I
As
mean
more of an internet thing eventually,
he
right?
was also the friend that had all the cool Star Wars toys. Um,
Oh,
but
don't you hate that guy? Don't you just hate the one person
uh,
who's got every
loved
Star
loved
Wars
going
toy?
to his
Like
house.
they got the
Loved.
whole Kenner line.
Um, General Madine. Yeah, I mean they even make like a faculty meeting really kind of interesting in this movie. Um,
Yeah.
I like how nobody knows what's going on within there. Don't you think that if wouldn't you tell the love of your life that yeah, hey, I'm going to you know,
This is new
I
to
literally,
him. He's kind of an idiot.
I literally just got rescued from death, from carbonite freezing, from certain death at the Sarlacc pit. Sure, let me double my chances or triple my odds of not making it out alive by volunteering on a suicide mission.
Well, I do think that's in character.
Exactly. It's the one thing we know that he loves to do.
Yeah. So like that does make sense, but then like him not telling her and it coming together so quickly. We don't know how much time has passed here. Maybe a few days. Um, it's
But
odd.
but you know what? It goes to a point that we've made about the Force Awakens and how the fall of Ben leads them all back to fall back into old habits. So of course, his son turning to the dark side, becoming Kylo Ren, would lead Leia to become more the general, and would lead Han to go back to being this guy,
by the
To
way,
me, this is the
impulsive,
most obvious
reckless.
matte painting
yes, it
in
is.
the
It is.
yeah.
I would hand it looks like a 7th grade project. Yes, this one is bad. I will give you that one.
Anyway, continue, Fredo.
No, but yeah, no, it's that idea of he's he being rescued, the love of his friends, the life that he's now found himself in, has taken him away from that character that we met at the cantina. But when things got bad, that's the character he reverted back to because that was the easiest thing for him to do in a moment of tragedy.
By the way, I love how Rebels, we've talked about it before. I loved how Rebels just kept the, like, why do they keep letting us steal these things? I mean, it's
Yeah,
like the Rebels have
but
been
it was the same
stealing
one.
these shuttles, for forever. They must be like the Kias and the Hyundais of, the Star Wars universe.
Well, remember,
Had
they're supposed to be Imperial military shuttles. You look at most military craft, they all look primarily the same when they're fulfilling the same function, and they buy in bulk. So yeah, not surprising. But yeah, Rebel's joke was perfect. It's like, they let us keep seeing steal these ones. Like, I thought it was the same one.
All right, so we're back to the Death Star.
There's the rhyming too in Rogue One of this idea
Mhm.
of sneaking in through the shield in an Imperial shuttle, and I like that. But
And
yeah,
of
now we're
course,
back to the Emperor.
Palpy would sniff that out.
Hmm, he's seen it,
Hmm. He's seen it
Yep,
coming.
not his
and
first
Vader's
rodeo,
seen it.
but yeah. Um, it's interesting. All these little scenes between the Emperor and the Vader, they're very short. They're very short, and then we're off to doing other things. So I find that makes the whole suspense and what's going on here. They could have made those scenes longer, and so it's in giving away a lot more of what the Empire has planned. So I thought it was really good that they just keep those things short. It moves things along. It's different than Jabba's palace, that's for sure. Um,
Do you think it's also within, the story, a way of kind of separating the Emperor and Vader because the Emperor knows Luke is coming, and at some point I gotta get Luke to turn. I'm gonna betray Vader.
oh, I
So
think
like,
I think I think Emperor is absolutely being a puppet master through this whole thing.
mm,
I mean,
mhm.
I think he wasn't lying later on in the movie when he says everything's going as I've planned. I mean, so everything is by his design here. He just was not anticipating Vader turning on him. So
Right, but what I mean is like he's not talking a lot with Vader. He sends him away to be at the Super Star Destroyer, and when Vader comes back to tell him that Luke is here, he's gonna be all ticked off because it's like I told you to be over there, don't be here.
yeah,
Maybe there's a worry about the kind of power that Darth Vader still has, and
mm,
maybe him letting some of his plans slip.
yeah, I like this connection between Luke and okay, so that's another thing. Luke knows that he and Vader have a connection from Empire because they were talking to each other,
Telepathically, right?
telepathically. So, yeah, why does he get on the ship? You are endangering the mission. You shouldn't have come. It's like
Hmm.
so he should have known better. He should have known to keep his butt back on home one. Because the last time he ran and tried to save his friends, all didn't work that well on Cloud City. So that makes you wonder: is the Force putting all of these things? Should we start talking about fate and destiny? Were these things, preordained to be happening, or do people make their own choices and suffer the consequences? What if, Fredo, you mentioned in our private chat, like Star Wars, what if? What if Luke would have just stayed on Dagobah?
Right.
I'm just gonna make a home here and take a vacation.
But
Yeah,
also when you consider, I mean, when you think about Luke, first of all, they're about to attack a Death Star. Who's the only pilot that the rebellion has experience about destroying the Death Star? Is Wedge and him. So you would think that him being the best pilot that the rebellion have, he would be the guy in charge of all the fighters and whatnot. But nope, here he is going through the woods.
I come at it from a completely different perspective, and which is that he's completely justified in doing this because Yoda told him that he needed to confront Vader.
He had to. Yeah.
And how's he going to confront Vader? He has to connect with him somehow,
So,
and this is how he gets in through their shields, through their defenses, so that he can eventually meet up with Vader.
well, that
And
makes the
again,
line interesting from Empire. You said, and sacrifice Han and Leia. You said, if you value what they fight for, then yes.
Yes.
So that's what he's kind of doing is sacrificing Han and Leia so he can get the bigger bad.
it's maybe he didn't think any of this through, and I think
Oh,
like
might be.
that's a running theme, right? Like their mission at Jabba's palace early on, it just seemed really ill conceived. And then Luke didn't really consider the ramifications until he's sitting in that shuttle and he's connecting with Vader. It's like, oh gosh, I'm putting these other people in danger by doing this, aren't I? But it's just like you know, he needed to do it.
Yeah.
He had to.
By the way, the design of the biker scouts, very cool. The speeder bikes, awesome. And this whole, chase through the forest. What I like about this versus the trench run is because we can all imagine if we're like riding a horse through a forest and a tree branch, is too low and you might get your head knocked off, type of. This is because we've all seen trees and been around trees, we can recognize the danger, I suppose. Or if you've
Mhm.
ridden your dirt bike through things, I don't know. But I just dug this sequence.
Yeah, that's the other part. They're exposed. They're not in like a cockpit where
Right.
they're covered up. They're just on a bike.
And even for 1983, they do a great job of building that sense of speed on these vehicles, on these speeder bikes. It's not like yes, they're models and blue screen or whatever, but no, they do a good job of giving you a sense that they're going at some insane amount of speed that they're having to have perfect control about where they're going, or they're going to end up, wrapped around a big sequoia.
I have to shout out Empire of Dreams again. This is
Hmm.
something that we do periodically on this on this podcast. Everyone should watch that. It's basically a 2 hour ish documentary about the making of the first three films. And they spend most of their time dealing with the first movie, um, as they should, I guess. But yeah, there's a lot of insight. Like, how was this done? How did they shoot this? You'll see that in there.
And kind of going back to kind of somewhat of the beginning of the story, or sort of the movie, we discussed about the idea of there being another Death Star. Now, I'm sure, I mean, you guys have read the original Star Wars script that George Lucas wrote in 72, 73.
Yeah, I've got
The
them.
Star,
Yep.
okay, like the Star Wars from the Journal of the Wills, but from the Tales of Anakin Sky, was it Anakin Starkiller?
Yeah.
So yeah, and in that one, I think George's original plan was that the Death Star wouldn't be destroyed till this chapter or this episode. So the idea was that the Death Star was going to continue, but then the reality of meeting a climactic finish to A New Hope forced him to go, nope, I gotta put the destruction of Death Star here, or this movie doesn't work, doesn't have an ending. And so, then it's interesting that he decided to go back and go, nope, I still need that big climactic Death Star destruction here. So he went and built another one. And of course, we all got it because it's like, yeah, that's fine.
By the
That's
way,
the
the
Empire. Of course, I got enough.
the first instance of deflecting laser blasts with a
Mm-hmm.
lightsaber, that was awesome back in 1983. Going, wow,
Mm-hmm.
cool. I remember just again new things that you can do with lightsabers and the Force. And
My favorite was always my brother had a Han Solo blaster and I got a lightsaber from Return of the Jedi. And of course, the big fight was, I shot you. No, I deflected it. No, but I shot you twice. I deflected both of them.
So some of the action and the choreography in particular is a little rough, especially I'm thinking on Jabba's sail barge.
yeah,
Um,
that fight sequence was bad. It's
there
like,
were a few like missed kicks that were pretty obvious and things of that nature, but like this, that's really good. That's such a good moment. You're right. And like pretty much from here, from the speeder bikes through the end of the movie, I've got basically no complaints about any of the action set pieces. Um, they're also fun.
all right, so here we go. Real quick, are you pro Ewok or anti Ewok? I'm pro Ewok.
I've,
Pro Ewok.
yeah, I've come to be pro Ewok. I always understand. I mean, again, the original idea was this would be, and in Kashyyyk, this would have been the Wookiees, which would have been awesome. But I also think in some way, uh, having the Ewoks works because you don't see them coming, literally.
And
The Empire's not seeing them coming. That's the thing that's going to drop.
and well, okay, so a couple things. First of all, let's talk about another special edition ad, and that is making the Ewoks blink. Um, that was it's one of those things where people are like, why'd you have to make the Ewoks blink? And it's like, well, actually, by doing so, you actually make it look less like
A
a,
doll.
a doll. Yeah. Um, there was always the people talking. I don't know if this was, how many times do we say it was George Lucas's intent? What did he actually say this? I don't know. But talk about the whole Battle of Endor. At least they draw comparisons to like the Vietnam War, where you have, you know, the the big the big technological terror military versus you know the native people of that land who are fighting with just pure determination. It's like um, oh no, like I said, was that what he's trying to get through to this? I think that idea of David and
Well,
Goliath, or like I said, um, I find that really interesting. But I always
well,
thought Wicket was cute. Anyway, go ahead.
yeah. No, I was going to say, and one of the other things that um, Star Wars really leans strongly upon is connection to nature,
Yeah,
connection through the Force to all living things. And if you notice, the Ewoks embody that to the nth degree. That they live in this lush, verdant, living world, and the only thing that sticks out like a sore thumb is the empire and their forces and their buildings because they don't exist in harmony with nature. They're in some ways cut off from the force. So the idea that they would be defeated by something they didn't see, that's not connected to the force or that is connected to the force, like the Ewoks, makes sense when you start looking at it that way.
and I
But yeah,
suppose
no, it's mhm,
to what I was saying earlier, the same comparison could be to American Revolution, where it's like we had no
mhm,
business beating the British, and all the
mhm.
firepower that they had. Um, but
Vietnam comparisons.
yeah,
I thematically it works
yeah,
really well. Execution wise, people differ. I think all three of us don't mind it, but it is an interesting thing on the sense that the Ewoks are a concession because originally it was supposed to be this amazingly, far out Kashyyyk with these Wookiees, doing these crazy things and, action oriented. And then it was just like, a bunch of little teddy bears eventually. And like, that's kind of like where we're at in Return of the Jedi. Like a lot of the decisions that they ultimately made in the movie were concessions in that way.
yeah.
Like I think like Lucas originally wanted this thing to be like 9 movies or 6 movies or whatever it
Well,
was.
well,
12, yeah. Depending on your version of events, it's a different
mhm.
number every time. Uh, but yeah, like it was meant to be bigger than 3, I think by most accounts. And so like for him to just decide, okay, I'm out. We're gonna just do 3 and we're gonna call it good. Again, a concession. And you see that like in a lot of the decisions. We're gonna go back to Tatooine. Why? Because we're creatively bankrupt. um, we're gonna, there's a lot of that in the fabric of this movie. And again, I don't hate it. I love this movie. Um, what's really interesting is watching the sort of hoops that they have to jump through in order to make it feel grander than it ultimately is. Because so much like the Death Star and all the rehashing and again, like Lucas was burnt out. Like if you know the actual real life story of how this movie came together, he was burnt the heck out by this point. And so if you know that going in and you can watch the film on that basis, yeah, a lot of the creative decisions begin to make sense. But at the same time, there's so much artistry involved in spite of that or because of that, which just elevates what we're actually watching. which like if you strip it bare, it's just a rehash, and it's a concession, and it's not as grand as it ever could have been.
Well, I mean, however, and you're right, 100%. I will say though, going back to Tatooine, going back to a Death Star, going back to places where we've been does not bother me. Actually, what bothers me is like, for example, in Rogue One, when we're on a different planet every scene, and it's like, where are we? What is this? I don't where what I feel like. I feel like I've been a hood's been put over my head. I'm stuffed in a trunk, and then all of a sudden I'm plopped out, and it's like, where am I? Um, so I don't
You
mind
feel
that.
like you're in a video game.
I don't. Yeah, I don't mind it. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about this little scene of them getting trapped by the the Ewok trap,
Comic relief.
and again R2 just taking upon himself to like nearly kill everybody. Um,
Comic relief, but also let's consider shows the intelligence of the Ewok because this is a big trap that they got a nice animal carcass there, but something bigger exists in Endor that the Ewoks are looking to hunt because that trap was able to hold Han, Luke, Chewie, and the two droids comfortably.
that's a
So
good point.
there's something, yeah. So it's showing you the intelligence and the skills that the Ewoks have in their understanding of their planet. Again, to Dave's point about that they are uh, a faction cognizant of the threats and the dangers in their environment.
I love the interaction of Han and the Ewoks here, where he's just like, "Gonna point a stick in my face. I'm gonna shoot you, you dumb little bear." And like you said, to the connection with nature, Luke's like, I think these guys can probably help us. So, but
Mhm. But
So,
also, go ahead,
I'll
Dave.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, kind of to back you up. I mean, we tend to forget. I mean, 1983 is 6 years since the New Hope came out. George had already made two of these films already. Helped directed one that nearly burnt him out. Helped steer the second one, helped steer this one. Throw in um, Raiders of the Lost Ark in the middle of all that. Lucasfilm, and Industrial Light and Magic expanded. I believe he went through one divorce because Marshall
mm-hmm.
Lucas, who is still the editor, is him and him divorced in the middle of all this. So it's a lot. I mean, we don't consider it from the standpoint of when we just get the movie, but there's so much going on in their lives of people putting this together that it's sometimes you go like it's amazing what we got because not to say that they were going to turn out crud, but it would have been quite easy for them to try to turn out something that ended up being middle of the road, as opposed to something that actually sticks most of the landing, like what we get.
I think that again, like you look at some of the shortcomings, like with things like the Ewoks, um, and half a Wookiee, we get half a Death Star this time around. You know, um, it's interesting on that level that like they're struggling to. He's Lucas himself is struggling to make this whole thing work, and it's because so much else is going on in his life.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is the meta experience of watching this and looking at Luke Skywalker as being a surrogate for George.
Mm-hmm.
And like the ultimate rebel, the guy who rebelled against the studio system and was like, no, I'm not gonna do things your way, and I'm gonna make my own company, and so I have my own creative vision that I can do. And like in the process of trying to see that through, he ends up creating these other corporations,
Yeah.
which he's at the top of. You become the thing that you hate. Um, and so the, all that's going on while this movie's being made. He's creating ILM, like you said, the divorce, all these things, and like it is kind of fun to just sort of like think of Luke as being George, because like is he going to turn to the dark side, or is he going to not be an evil corporate overlord and actually not take his father's place in that respect? And um, that stuff's fun. Of course, this stuff's fun too
Okay,
that we're seeing on screen, where Han Solo is about to be burned alive.
real quick. Again,
Alive.
the meme that has gone around a bunch. It's like, all right, so where did the Ewoks get the dress that Leia is wearing? It's like, who's the lady that they killed and ate and kept her clothes? Because that obviously they're going to cook and eat Han and Chewie and Luke, and um, it's like, where did this dress come from? Anyway, and I
Mhm,
love this. Tell him you'll use your powers. You'll get mad and use your magic, and
mhm,
that's this whole thing is funny. But it's the first
mhm,
time that I think any of the main cast see Luke use the Force.
mhm.
So
It is.
it's a big moment, you know, that I think just gets kind of glossed over.
Right, because they saw him wield a lightsaber and kick butt on Jabba's sail barge, but this is different. This is
And I'm sorry,
him actually.
I will argue with anybody. I don't care. It does not require great, knowledge of the Force to wield a lightsaber. Um, but to yeah, I mean, so yeah, that's I mean, so it's like he's got a weapon, big whoop de doo.
Mhm,
But now he's, you know, moving things with his
mhm,
mind. This has to imagine if you saw. I mean, that's why it makes Han Solo's, line in The Force Awakens one of the best things ever, where he says, the Jedi, the Force, it's
all
true,
of it.
all of it. This is the moment where he realizes that, you know,
Mhm.
because
Well,
when
if I
we were
could,
back on Jabba's palace, he was like, Jedi Knight, what? It's like Luke's full of it, basically. So this moment
so,
right here is a big, big moment.
just right quick before we move off the barbecuing Han Solo to the next scene, they didn't take his clothes off. So, did, so were they planning on eating his clothes? What did they take the clothes of the lady because something happened? I don't know. It creates a very interesting question, and I don't know if you probably I don't know if you've ever played Battlefront 2, the Star
Did
Wars
they
video
take the
game.
clothes off somebody before they eat them or something?
No, no, they have a whole level in there that's Endor at night. And it's like it almost plays like a horror movie for the stormtroopers. I love it because they're like, "Oh my God, they're coming out of the trees! They're coming out of the trees!" And all of a sudden you hear that Houdini, no, not Houdini. I'm sorry. Now, the Ewoks chanting and coming out of the woods and assaulting the stormtroopers. It's fun because
That's what you're looking for,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Thank you.
All right, so we're always looking for character growth out of our characters. This is
Mhm,
character growth for C3PO. He
mhm.
said in the first movie, I'm not very good at telling stories.
And he's telling the whole story right here. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep. Um, and this scene really helps to. It's just from a movie making standpoint. It's a nice little, you know, and it doesn't last very long. It's very cute, and they also figure out that there's a there's a back door or there's a shield generator, they can get to. So
Mhm.
I
And also, but I mean, I think particularly because the next scene we're going to get is a very emotional scene. You kind of need to give, you can't go from the wars and all the fun stuff there. You're going to have that little transition right here to the moment where Luke finally reveals things to Leia. You know, you need to have this little transition moment where everybody's kind of, okay, like I said, peaceful, everything's calmed down. And I love this moment between Han and 3PO.
yes, Han and 3PO in Empire and Jedi is perfect. And that's why, like I said, and Ryan Johnson kind of got that when he wrote Poe and 3PO. Kind of got that interaction.
They're just like, and hurry up, will you? And then 3PO does like a double take.
Yeah.
Always those makes me laugh.
And I think we're on Princess Leia's fifth hairdo of the movie.
Yep.
Um,
Remembering her real mother, which is a bone of contention for some people.
Because
How could she? Does
remember,
she
Luke
think
is it. Luke is the first twin that came out, but he has no memory of her.
well, there are people who have like made it into this in their own head canon that Padme's death was faked, the funeral was fake, and that she went and lived on Alderaan with Leia and the Organas, and but just never said that. I mean, yeah. So people have gone through mental gymnastics. I don't know. I think there are well, people remember things you know that weren't there. It's
there you go?
the big scenes from from the A New Hope. It was like, no, you never saw those. I'm sorry, you never saw them. You saw them in a book, and you think you
Or
saw
after
them.
the fact, right?
Yeah, it's sorry, it just they weren't there, and it's just that's the way our memories work. So now we have Obi-Wan Kenobi, the mini series, maybe what he told Leia about her mother. Maybe that's what she's remembering here. You know,
Hmm.
I mean, again, it's retconning, but you know, at the time though,
Which
at the time in 1983, well, actually, they wrote this in 1983, and then when you get to what happens in the prequels, yeah, he contradicts
Yeah,
himself.
Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But also, it's interesting because talking about not necessarily retconning, but the realities of writing stuff that's supposed to fit in between. Like, it's interesting that outside of the one moment where she recognizes his name in A New Hope, I mean,
but
both of them have a relationship with Obi-Wan. Yet, and in some ways, Leia's relationship is bigger and stronger than Luke's.
so
But yet,
they
never mentioned here.
they say that a baby can recognize the parent's voice before they are born. So in the Star Wars universe, we're talking about somebody who is as strong with the Force as Princess Leia is. Is it possible that she knows more about her mother than a typical newborn? God, are we getting nerdy here? But so I guess
No, this is
I will give him a pass on this one because it's like if you have that much of a connection, you probably know a lot about the being that you came from without even having ever seen her. Um, so,
I think ultimately this is one of those things that George Lucas, never felt like he would ever need to go back and explain. And then,
yeah.
like inside, like Dave saying, look, this is the last one. I'm done. I'm never coming back here.
and
I
I
can put whatever I want. And, we can write books later. We can retcon, we can figure it out, years down the line. And
and I love
nobody's ever going to care about this. And then he makes the prequels. And now it's a bone of contention
and I
because he never
love.
thought he'd come back.
Sorry, I have to jump in here. I love Han Solo acting like a high school junior right now. It's like, oh,
Yep.
you can tell Luke. That's who you can tell. You want to go be with Luke? Go be with him.
But,
It's
but,
like,
but also to Dave's point again, his growth.
Yeah.
Old Han in A New Hope, or even Empire would have been like, you know what? Ah, heck with this. I'm not for this. But like, he's far more connected to Leia and to and he values this relationship that he's built with her to the point
Dude
that he
came
can't just,
back and apologized.
he did the grown up thing. It's like,
Yep.
dang it, I stuck my foot in it. I better come back and come correct.
little thing here that I always thought was very cool was seeing the AT-AT.
Hmm.
I don't know why. I just always thought that was just
I
cool.
don't think I noticed that for a number of years, or at least not in a way that it just really jumped out at me. And
And
but yeah, like the older I got, the
It's
more I
and
appreciated that it was there.
by the way, I want to. Everybody needs to go watch Family Guy's, Star Wars Empire and Jedi, specials that they did. It's one of my
something
favorite
something
lines.
dark side.
One of my favorite lines here is when Stewie, you know, as Darth Vader says something, and the Imperial officer says, Good, our first catch of the day. He goes, go wait in the AT-AT. Just love it. Um,
I love the scene where he does when they do this. I go, my, what a voice! Can you say this? Paging Mr. Herman,
yeah.
Mr. Pee Wee Herman. Because again, yeah, you got all these English actors with this strong diction. So,
By the way, a
of
little bit.
course,
You
mhm,
want to talk a little nerdy here? The mouths of the stormtroopers change in Empire and Jedi from A New Hope. A New Hope, the mouth is gray with black slits, and in the last two, it's all black. Just so you know. Um,
mhm.
and by
Is
the
this the
way,
first?
the 10-year-old Aaron was absolutely sure that Vader was going to chop down Luke in this scene. But anyway,
Oh
That's
yeah.
how that's how it's supposed to be playing. It's interesting. This is also the first mention that we get of Anakin Skywalker as Anakin. That it's not just Luke's dad. His actual name finally comes into the forefront.
that's true.
Like dude's
Uh,
like established at this point as being evil, and Luke's unarmed. He's got his lightsaber. He's like brandishing it at him. Yeah, no, like as a little kid, you're like, oh my god, he's gonna cut him down.
and we've seen him do it. That's the thing. It's like when you've seen a character be as evil as Darth Vader has been through two movies, the fact that this is the moment where he might just chop him down. In fact, the only reason you think no, they're not going to do that is because they've built up the idea that Luke must face the Emperor. So, but outside of that, if Vader swung and killed him, would anybody
It
have been
adds that
surprised?
little extra bit of tension, doesn't it? Like this whole scene is electric.
Hmm.
Um, and it's exposition mostly, and it's just two people sort of like talking about the
Think
past,
about that.
and
There
you know,
is yeah, in A New Hope, there is not this much like conversation that goes
oh
on
yeah,
in Return of the Jedi. There's a
there's a
lot of
lot
conversation.
of conversation. We just came out of
It's like
the whole
Clerks,
Leia Luke thing.
you know. It's
Yeah,
like a Kevin Smith movie.
two people on screen talking. But in this scene in particular, it like if you're a kid who's been like nodding off at this point, you see that lightsaber ignite, and you're like, oh gosh, I'm listening now.
But I also think it's because of the nature of this movie. This is where everything needs to get paid off. Everything needs, all cards need to be revealed. Everything has to come out to the open. Whereas A New Hope, where you're setting everything up. I mean, I think that most talky scene there is the one where between Ben and Luke, when Ben's telling him the entire backstory of the Force and you know and who he was, and they get to see Leia's message. But that's about it because that's a movie that's propelling itself because we don't need to know everything. By this point, it's time for them to tell us everything that we've been asking.
I'm trying to imagine the guy at ILM who got assigned. You've got to make the Ewoks blink. Anyway, one of the things, by the way, is we're getting kind of wound up here towards the space battle. They finally figured out in Return of the Jedi how to make the ships look like they're flying fast. I guess they got the TIE fighters a little bit in Empire Strikes Back, but they really did a good job at figuring out speed in this movie.
Particularly
Yeah.
speed through space, meaning through the vacuum of space where you're not supposed to have a reference point, which is why the
Endor works
forest
so well.
moon,
Yeah.
yeah, the forest moon helps tremendously because it gives you a point that you could set the perspective of speed against. But yeah, even like this moment right here where the ships and the fighters are all going through the fleet. Just the simple act of them kind of cutting across and around them helps give you that sense that these are the fast ships and the capital ships are not the ones, the big ones.
By the way, I like how Ahsoka has and some of the new well, especially in Ahsoka because they were on Home One, and but in Rogue One as well. It's like they all used Admiral Akbar's command chair type of a thing for these ships.
Capital,
It's just kind of nifty. Um,
aren't those calamari ships, calamari
yeah,
vessels?
yeah.
Okay, so it makes sense. But I love the design. They keep it even in. I want to say they even keep it in Last Jedi. because I want to remember the chair that Poe Dameron sitting,
That's true.
standing, crouching behind, ready to see shoot whoever comes to
I
stop
guess
him. It's
was that home one that well no it wouldn't have been home one. Well yeah, it could have been home one. I don't know,
could have
but
been him one because that was Akbar. May he
yeah,
rest in peace.
we kill off screen. Yeah, and then you got the one stupid little Ewok who's gonna go, mess around with the speeder bike, but ends up doing a good thing. And it was again comic relief because you got the Ewok who can't drive a speeder
But
bike. It's
also,
funny.
it's like Han says, like
Yeah,
not bad. It's like okay, they took away the guy, left only one guard behind. So and yeah, you get the little moment with the Ewok just kind of floating in the air as he's not accustomed to piloting this thing.
It yeah, it's such a small little thing, but I remember like the tension again when you're younger. You're like, oh gosh, this Ewok's gonna screw everything up, and then no, okay, great, a little
Hey, there's
happy
Captain.
accident.
Hey, look, here comes Captain Rex.
Yep, here he comes. Yep,
that's it. Yep, there you go. Got the guy with
that's
the
all you get, kids.
white bushy beard, and has it been determined that did they say that is Captain Rex? Have they decided?
I don't
I
know.
know he fought
We'll
on the
keep
Yeah,
Battle of
going around
Endor.
on
They
this.
did say that he fought in the Battle of Endor. Um,
Yeah.
I will say, however, that we keep going, but every time we keep going to the Death Star, it does seem like we have the same scene over and over again. That is just um, one of the critiques. But throne room, very very cool. Um,
There's a
and
build up
also,
to it though. Like you said, there's a few scenes of the Emperor just taunting him until those sabers come out. And then you're like, okay, so now it's on.
just consider back when we got the scenes in the Death Star and A New Hope. We got to go all around it. We got to go from the detention center to the command deck, the conference room, the trash compactor, the hangar. Here, outside of the couple of hangar shots, all of it by primarily it takes place here. It's in the throne room. It's like we'll get a couple of shots when they're over by the Death Star's laser where they don't put a railing. That's the only thing they ask for, not a raise, but a railing. But all the Death Star important stuff is happening here in the throne room. It's here between the Emperor, Vader, and Luke.
So that's a
By the way,
point.
I
mhm,
I love. I'm sorry. I love the reaction shots from Vader whenever Luke lips off to the Emperor. It's always like,
mhm,
dude, knock it off.
mhm. Interesting that by the way, Ian McDermott, who I don't think he's got 20 minutes of screen time total in this movie, but he nailed the character to the point that he had to be brought back, and he's now such an iconic part of the Star Wars lore. Because Palpatine just rules somehow. Uh, Look, I find it interesting that he calls the lightsaber a Jedi's weapon. Because it always makes it seem like, okay, do the Sith are not meant to have these lightsabers?
Well,
They do.
I mean, yeah, he's just, I mean, he's patronizing Luke. Oh, you're a Jedi because you have a lightsaber, huh? That's okay. Um,
Mhm. By the way, is that the most comfortable chair you got, Aaron?
it is a comfortable chair. Yeah,
Yeah, but listen, I know Aaron's got the Emperor's throne room in his office. Throne, I'm sorry, not throne
yeah.
room.
I I didn't realize there was purple until I saw it in your in your office, and then now I see it's purple.
Yeah, it's not an exact, replica, but it's close enough and it was cool enough. So,
Well, the thing is, purple is the color of regal, of royalty.
It absolutely is, says the Kansas State grad.
ugh.
I set him up for that one. Sorry, Aaron.
Yeah, way to go. Um,
Oh my God. We're gonna get this scene. Okay, everybody, Take out your hats, go outside and dig your own graves.
That from Family Guy, yes. I'm up to
Oh, we're
here with
Ghostbusters.
Ewoks. I've had it up to here with Ewoks.
I have to say that. It's just that moment. And I just saw that scene again recently and just made me bust out laughing.
This is this bit with the score,
Mm,
and we're not listening to the score right now, but I can recall what piece of music this is from John Williams, and it's so amazing.
mm.
And it's like I think they put it into like basically every video game that was released over the next 20 years because it was so good.
We just missed the most famous line, though. You rebel scum.
Full scum.
Yeah.
That's the one that triggers up Mr. Page and Mr. Herman in Family Guy. By the way, yeah, no, but you're right, Dave. A lot of the score, particularly Jedi, gets lifted for a lot of the video games for the Shadows of the Empire,
Yeah.
Rogue Squadron, anything having to do with Star Wars in a video game gets a lot of its action cues because primarily from this point on, this primarily becomes an action movie. You're having the battle in Endor, the battle in space, and the duel in the throne room. So just the talking, all the talking scenes are done. Now it's all about surviving.
This movie, for us older folks, is the gold standard for sticking the landing because of all of what we're seeing over the next half hour or so. This is it, and this is why for Rise of
It's a trap.
Skywalker is
Sorry.
kind of and in a lot of ways because it didn't stick the landing in the way that this did.
I mean, it's just consider it. This moment we've revealed that the shield generator's up, that the Rebel Alliance's plans are not happening, and we're about to get the next big reveal, which is going to set the rebels back even further.
By the way, the
Yeah,
other
and
interesting
It's
that's
thing
just
a big
too.
building.
thing too. That's a big thing. To, like make the battle make sense.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I went back and I listened to one of our older episodes recently, which it was like the favorite space battles in Star Wars, and there's not a lot to choose from, uh, but it's when you can see the logic of it, you see the strategy. They tell you what's happening, they show you what's happening. It all makes sense, and I don't know why they can't do more of this. And like you said, the shield's up. Okay, we have to evade. Oh, the Death Star is operational. Oh, now we have to get away from the Death Star and fly close to the enemy ships. And it's like, and they're laying it out for you in dialogue, step by step, as you go along, and then you see it unfold on screen, and it follows the logic, and you can follow what's happening. And I don't know. There's more investment. You're being included in the conversation. You're being included in the strategy of it. And so you have more of a vested interest in what you're seeing. It's not just special effects. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
a ship flying by that blew up another ship. There's an actual okay, what they're trying to achieve right here. Okay, they're trying to get closer to the big ship so that they don't get blown up, and you're in it. And like so many modern films, they don't do that.
Well, look at it from the standpoint right here. By this point, the Emperor has revealed this trap. He knew that the rebels were coming. He's got sufficient troops that have captured the team on the Forest Moon. He's got his entire fleet blocking the rebels' escape route. So the ships are not going anywhere. And he's got the only wild card that he thinks exists, which is Luke, in his presence trapped. So everything has gone according to how he's thought about it. What's the one thing he didn't count on? They're coming right now. The Ewoks.
Yeah. Um, yeah. No.
The curveball.
The curveball.
Again, the people who get so upset about this, like to your point, Dave. This makes sense from a storytelling perspective. It's yeah. It's so why this whole battle bothers people. The Ewoks. Beating stormtroopers again. You just have to look at history for crying out loud. So let's talk about Palpatine um, kind of trying to trying to seduce Luke. Do you think Vader is? I mean, and we didn't know. Again, they wrote this without having Revenge of the Sith. Looking at it now, I think it's like clear that's like Vader, Anakin, is having some serious PTSD and seeing his son going through his biggest regret. And does that? And I know I'm getting ahead of things, but we just have
Mhm.
Ewoks flying around and you know beating stormtroopers. But
Being
do
good
you,
tonight.
but we've already seen some of those Vader reactions. Do you think that's what's going on, or do you think it's like he's trying to replace me? That you know, dirty sob. Um,
Well, you got to real. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if at this moment Vader's thinking back to being aboard the Invisible Hand at the start of Revenge of the Sith,
but again, they
and
didn't.
just
I'm trying to get into when George Lucas wrote this. Before Revenge of the Sith even existed.
Mhm, mhm,
That's what
mhm.
I'm saying. Is like, what was the motivation then versus now? We know probably the motivation is about like I said, he's seeing his son go through the whole thing, and we can get that here in a
I,
little bit. But
yeah, I think at this point, yeah, I think it's more along the lines of he's trying to convert Luke to the dark side, which is what I tried to do on Bespin and failed. So if the Emperor can help me take a look to the dark side, hey, congrats! And of course, he loves me because I feel that emotion in him. So maybe Vader's thinking if the Emperor can help me turn Luke to the dark side, I'll convince him to join me, and we together can defeat the Emperor because he already knows that that's the Emperor's big fear. But also maybe he's thinking maybe he knows that as well, and he's trying to get ahead of me. So it's a there's a bit of chess being played behind the scenes between Vader and the Emperor for who's going to ultimately own Luke's soul.
I think too. We don't know what's going through his head the whole time, but like by the time that he acts, I think that it's love for his son exclusively because I don't think there's a revenge angle to that. I think he knows at that point, like, I'm, I may not survive this, right? I feel like the Tiger King, like I may not financially recover from this. Um, it's just like I'm going in. He's gonna fry me with lightning, but I'm doing it to save my son. And that's how I always read that scene was just a father's love, and it always meant a lot to me on that level. Um, I never really thought like, oh, he's trying to replace me. Well, I'll show him. I never really thought about it in that way.
I don't think that by the point that he finally acts, he's thinking that. But I think maybe early on here, there may be some of that happening because again, we know the nature of the Sith. Their nature is to betray one another. And so maybe Vader's thinking that if at the end of all this, I'm the Emperor, Luke is by my side, we're both Sith Lords, and Palpatine somehow is not here anymore, gone.
He did verbalize that at the end of Empire.
Empire.
Yeah,
So we know
and
it's in the back of his head.
yeah,
And yeah, we get to see the Death Star here firing. And again, the further closing of the trap by the Emperor and the idea that the rebellion, has to win here, or they may not be a rebellion after today.
there's a lot of cutting back and forth between the
Now,
different elements here. Um, I
which
think
would,
that I just wanted to say that like, I think the execution here is really well done.
mm-hmm.
Um, when you mentioned the Ewoks popping up, like that's when things seem bleakest, I think,
mhm.
and then the spark of hope is the Ewoks popping up and starting to slowly turn the tide. They're still in a bad way at this stage of things, but at least now you've got like some little small glimmer of hope as an audience member. Oh, maybe they're going to get through this. And so I think like the timing of that that moment in particular was just really well done.
But, by the way, Aaron, what do you think the AT-AT was doing while this battle's going on? Was the AT-AT driver having a coffee break?
Probably. Yeah. Um, here is the saddest death in
Mm-hmm.
all of
Mm-hmm.
cinema.
He got the AT-AT got taken out by the guy in the glider with the rocks. He took out the AT-AT.
Mm-hmm.
But no, when this Ewok got uh, this 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 scene
Mhm.
just breaks my heart. All right,
Mm-hmm.
good. We're past it now. Um,
But also to cutting back and forth point, because you're right. I mean, go back to what we were just saying an hour or so ago. There's no cutting back from Jabba's palace when we're there. Here we're going from space to Endor to the throne room, and it's very frenetic. Everything's playing in a matter of moments. One action here is having a consequence elsewhere. So, if Han and Leia can't get the shield deactivated, the pilots and Lando are going to die. If Luke doesn't find a way to stop Vader, well, actually, no, in an interesting way, the duel here, it's almost like it's happening on its own parallel plane, like it's separate from the battle. You know, it's more like this is a fight for Luke, and the Battle of Endor is what's happening on Endor and in space. But yet we know that this is vital.
so Yoda tells Luke that he has to, and Obi-Wan as well tells him he has to confront Vader. So the only and so is Luke actually turning to the dark side here? You know what I mean? That's one of those things
Yeah.
I've always. It's like just because he's like gonna take down the bad guys, we're led to believe that by Palpatine that okay, good, you because you're using your anger, you're turning to the dark side. It's like, eh.
Well, but isn't that much the same way as what he senses in Ben in Last Jedi? That he's turning to the dark side, that he's falling. And again, it's that moment. It's the same moment of hesitation that he has when he picks up his lightsaber and lights it over Ben. It's the same that he just has right here with the Emperor, where he swings at him, and of course Vader blocks it. But it's that sense of that momentary giving in is all it takes for things to go bad. By the way, was that the Tarzan?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Are we
Okay,
pro Tarzan yell? I'm pro Tarzan yell.
I'm fine. I was fine. No, I'm fine with Chewbacca
When
doing
it
it.
when it's done like once, yeah, no, it was funny. But however, I think to one of your, I think Fredo, to your point, I think Lucas was done by this point, so it was like, yeah, let's just make him do a Tarzan yell. I mean, it does, it anyway.
It's the kind of thing that the
It's
kids in
funny. We needed something.
1983.
We needed something to laugh at this point.
Yeah,
I mean, things are pretty heavy, so
but also it's the kind of thing that if you're a little kid who didn't grow up with Tarzan, you may not know, which a lot of kids in
uh,
1983 may not know, versus their parents, they're gonna get a kick out of it, which I don't
and
mind.
and I love Chewbacca and the Ewoks, kind of like Cheech and Chong here, driving, a stolen
They had a
car.
TSD,
It's.
which
With that
I'm
Ewok
glad.
brushing his hair.
By
Yeah.
the way, have you ever seen the Today Show? It was Halloween, and they were all dressed up as Star Wars, and they had an Ewok on set, and the Ewok started humping Al Roker's leg.
Nope, missed that.
Dave, have you never seen this?
No.
I will send you the clip later. We're pretty sure that whoever was dressed as this Ewok was drunk on the Today Show. I'll
Nice.
send it to you later. All you need to do is Google Ewok Today Show, or on YouTube, and you'll find it. Um,
So it's fun watching all these different ingenious ways they take down these walkers and troopers. Um,
But like I said, we've already seen that they're clever about life on Endor. They
well,
know how to
and
set
it,
up intricate traps. So,
but again, to like the American Revolution, that's the thing, is that
mm,
the Americans started to fight unfairly. They weren't following the
the
ways
rules.
of battle, and so they were being snipers. They were so that this all kind of checks, like I said, with. And I love this,
I
by the
love
way.
you.
I love
I
you. I
love you.
know. Yeah,
Yeah,
reversed. Yep. Sorry,
we get that
everybody. We're
payoff. It's so good.
which is I think in a way was necessary to kind of okay, no, that he needs to say it too. You know, he needs to stop being the coolest guy in the room and just for a moment acknowledge his emotions and what he's feeling, which is part of his entire journey here. And hey, duels. Oh wait, did you ever have a problem with this duel? I know that by the time Phantom Menace comes along, George is really hyping up the Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan versus Maul. They're saying here we see Jedi in their prime having their massive duels because in the original movies we had like a kid versus this 7-foot asthmatic with an old man with prosthetics. But to me, this felt always impactful. It
It was a
was
good
really
duel.
cool.
It was a good duel.
Mhm.
I mean, it's obviously what they did in the Phantom Menace was a lot faster, and
Right.
in the prequels. I mean, there is something to be said. You're right. It is an inexperienced kid and an old man, so it's only going to go, you know, so far. Um,
But I
It,
also
it-
think, in part, the nature of this duel is far more personal than even the Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan versus Maul duel. There, they just felt very much like it was a Ohio State versus Michigan, to use a um, college football colloquialism, meaning rivalry. Like they're more standing for their team, whereas this feels very much like it's the duel is almost like the thing they have to do
yeah, Luke has
in
the high
order.
ground. Sorry,
Mhm.
keep going.
Yeah. No, this is the duels what they have to do in order to get at the truth of who they really are, their emotions.
the formality,
Mhm.
it's like in the new Ahsoka series when um our main antagonist is just like,
Mhm.
and so we do the sabers, yes, like that kind of thing. Like this is like we have to get through this part of the proceedings to get to the real meat and potatoes of it. Um, though the thing for this duel that you have to give it credit for is one of the most emotional ones, especially when Luke snaps in a few minutes there.
By the way, I did say, I jokingly said Luke has the high ground. There is so much that they have done since this movie and the original three movies that has made some of these moments in the original three movies more impactful. That's one of them because it isn't a large stretch to when Luke leaps up and has the high ground, you can probably hear Vader's thoughts going, "All right, been here. Not I'm not gonna go for I'm not gonna I'm gonna do something different here." It's just kind of nifty. Whether it's intentional when they made Revenge of the Sith or not, it's
It's an interesting thought because yeah, you wonder if maybe this is just showing progress. But of course, Jedi here is coming before Sith, so um, but I think it's a good way to create this moment, the moment that's coming up right here, where it's Vader searching in the dark for Luke.
did you say Jedi came
And
before Sith? What?
yeah, Return of the Jedi came before Revenge of the Sith. One came out in 1983,
Well,
one came out
okay,
in 2005.
not in movie
Yeah,
chronology.
chronologically, not in the
Not right.
numerically. Yeah, because they didn't, the idea
I
of the
thought you
high ground
lost your
didn't
mind
exist till
there for a minute.
2005. No, not yet, not yet. But it's because it's setting up this again, kind of like they were saying, the meat and potatoes. This is the moment when it's all about the idea of what is Luke fighting for. Luke is fighting for his sister. Luke is fighting
Okay,
for his friends, and that's the weak point that Vader can poke.
and here's the thing: is that Luke is not perfect, everybody, because his masters even said bury your feelings down. They do you credit, but they can be used to serve the Emperor. And so, what does he do when he's hiding? He thinks of Leia, and that gets Vader, gives Vader information that he needs. It's like, so Luke fumbles the ball, a couple times in this movie. So again, that's why I go back to it makes sense. That doesn't make him bad. It doesn't make him,
Mm.
any less of a Jedi, but it's why that storyline in The Last Jedi makes sense to me.
Mhm. And this makes sense, being who he is, being the go back to Empire and how Yoda, hugs Luke and says, he much anger in him like his father.
Now there,
Here it is.
by the way, right here, he was using the dark side here when he was chopping away at Vader and then chopped off his hand, and he's all about not knowledge and defense. He's out for some butt whooping. So
And the
You
music
kind
and the
of,
music.
yeah, you kind of wonder if Palpatine hadn't said one word, would he have just gone ahead and finished him off? But he starts in with his, "Ooh, be my apprentice."
good,
Yeah,
good.
Mhm.
and Luke's like, "Oh, yeah, you're right. You're gross. I don't want anything to do with you." Oh, okay.
Let me say right quick, because I was going to mention the music. I love the turn that it gets where the choir just builds as Luke is just delivering that
Hmm.
whooping. And then right here where he says, I'm a Jedi like my father before me, the music, it's almost like they hold this note. I don't know, Aaron, you probably describe this better than I.
Hmm.
They hold the music for a moment until Palpatine says, so be it, Jedi.
And Fredo
And then it
freezes.
continues. It's
Oh,
almost like everything's holds to opposition. Did I?
you
Did I
froze.
freeze?
Yeah,
Okay. No,
You
so
held the note.
you held the
I
note.
held the note.
Yeah.
I held the note for too long, but that idea of, the music holds still for a moment, everything stops for a moment to kind of give weight to that declaration by Luke, and Palpatine then accepts it and goes, "Okay, I cannot turn you. Fine, gotta get rid of you."
And by the way, yes, Dave, to your point about the battle, it's like here it is like the shield is down now. Go 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 go. I mean, it's like you're right. Everything in this third act makes sense, and they just it just works. All right, so here's the first time we ever see anybody use Force lightning chronologically in
Mhm.
1983, and the net nerds did not lose. There were no net nerds, but the nerds did not lose their mind. So we're introduced to okay. So in A New Hope, we get the force power of Jedi mind trick. In Empire Strikes Back, we get the force power of levitation and moving things, in telekinesis. In Return of the Jedi, we get the force power of shooting lightning. So why are we so upset in The Last Jedi when Luke does a force projection?
Or when they do the Force healing in Rise of Skywalker.
Right. Why? It's just these things drive me bonkers. It's like why is it, I don't know.
Yeah, no, this is where the net nerds of today really lost their mind because you start thinking, wait a minute, the whole point of the Force is that it's a thing that's unknowable but all powerful. So the abilities it bestows upon its users are only limited by the imagination of the writer and director putting it together. This there is no limitation. That's the whole point. It's an energy field.
Talk
The question
about
of how you use it.
talk about the music. Um,
Mhm.
when it shifts from the Emperor's theme to the Force theme, which is arguably the Skywalker theme.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, however, so that is awesome, but it is ruined by the special edition editions of
No,
no.
no.
I don't need that. No.
No, didn't. 10-year-old Aaron did not need that, folks. And it's not like, eh,
Vader turning from Luke getting killed to Palpatine back to Luke. It lets you know, weirdly enough, for a guy in a mask, you understand everything that
understood
he's
what was
thinking.
going on. Yeah. And again, we're
You
not talking
already knew.
about 50-year-old Aaron. We're talking about 10-year-old Aaron. It's like, um, now I will say, well, and maybe we can talk. Well, no, I'm going to save something for later here. English teacher, and he also taught. We had a couple electives in high school, movie lit and film comp, where you got to make your own movies. Um, he was a huge Star Wars fan, but he was absolutely upset with the Darth Vader. Um, the
That's
I guess the reveal is how you have the biggest baddest villain of all time, and you reveal him to be a frail
because
old frail old man. And
he went
it's
chasing Amy on you.
so
Yep.
What's that?
He went chasing Amy on you.
Yeah, kind of. But
And Jedi is the most insulting installment.
no, I mean it's just more about the fact that he becomes this weak being. It's like I don't know. Vader maybe
Well,
should have gone down the shaft with Palpatine in his mind. Anyway,
no,
um,
I think just to say right quick to that, I think it's needed. You needed the
I
final
agree with you.
reveal,
I agree with
and you
you.
needed that moment of catharsis between him and Luke. But I also think because of the nature of who Vader was, I mean, he's a half man kept alive by the equivalent of a iron lung, a galaxy far, far
Yeah.
away. If you start pulling all the plugs or you shock it, deliver electricity to it, you know, the thing keeping him alive is gone, so he's going to die. That's just, again, you don't need that to have that explained to understand it. So I don't know. I've never had sat well with me. I think we needed this moment. Also, right quick, just to that whole skimming along the Death Star, getting to the Death Star. If you ever played Rogue Squadron 2, that was a pain in the butt level.
Well,
I don't know if
if
you
you
did.
played Super Return of the Jedi,
Mm.
flying in the superstructure of the Death Star, that was stuff. All right, so this was another funny meme that Britt shared with me. At this point, Luke is Holland Vader, and the Empire is running away, but you hear blasters in the background. There's blaster fire, and it's like so they must be shooting each other to get on a ship or a lifeboat or a escape pod or something. It's like
Did you ever,
never thought about that, but it's like, well,
uh,
okay,
did you ever see Spaceballs?
yeah,
I'll never not think of Spaceballs now when
yeah.
I see the end of this with all these guys,
No,
every man for himself.
Even
Yeah.
the timpani player. Um,
I'm the bearded lady. Who are you? One of the freak?
But yeah, no, like this was also strange, I think, at the time. Because like Luke's saving him or trying to save him. Like as a kid, you're kind of like, wait, that feels wrong. Or like, isn't he the bad guy? Why are you trying to save him? Um, which again speaks to who he is as a person, as a Jedi, who he's trying to be, not giving into the dark side, but also he cares for this person now.
I also think it demonstrates, and this is something that 8-year-old me would not have gotten. There's more than one way to save somebody, and that's what Vader or Anakin at this point is telling Luke when he says, "You were right about me. You saved me already." Is that it's this saving the physically, because the reality is Darth Vader or Anakin Skywalker in this suit can't leave the Death Star, go meet up with the rebellion and say, "Hi guys, how you doing?" So sorry about all the bad stuff we did, but I'm redeemed now, and let me help you.
which is
You
what
know,
people wanted from Kylo Ren.
exactly.
There's such an interesting point in that, which is like, yeah, no, we are married to our choices. Every choice that he has made to this point locks him into this role. Like you said, Darth Vader like showing up at the rebel camp and saying, "Hey guys, is everything okay now? Truce."
Cool, we cool.
Yeah, let bygones
Like
be
he
bygones. I
knows.
mean,
Yeah, he knows that's not a thing he can do. He
No,
can't do that. And he knows that. And for him at this point, he's like, it's probably just as well that I die. Um, and like
again,
ultimately you did get through to me, and that does matter.
it's why I'm glad that Ben Solo died because I'm sorry you don't you know you
I don't know, man.
you
Like
don't
I tell you, I like my idea.
no
Like the
you
two
don't
of
get to
them on the
come
run.
back from mass genocide and killing your own father and everything's all good.
Two of them could have taken off together. Ben and Ray, they could have just like gone off to some other corner of the galaxy, hid out like Yoda, you know?
live that in the Lars homestead.
It's been done. I'm just saying they could have done that.
By the way,
Anyway,
the Millennium Falcon losing the radar dish, I recreated that many a times in my living room. Just because the radar dish comes off of the Millennium Falcon, the Kenner toy.
yeah.
So anyway,
By the way, yeah, and that moment where you see the explosion and then the Falcon shit out, I think that's where they had the okay, maybe this is where Lando bites it moment, which is it's interesting that they built all these moments where you're led to think maybe Luke dies, maybe Lando dies, maybe Han La dies, so you don't know. So the fact that everybody makes it out alive is something I've always mentioned. Vector Prime, the Legends book where Baka dies and just the idea that Leia, it's talking later on about how they always seem to make it out alive. So it always made them think that they would always make it out alive, which, if
And
it's true.
and here's Han behaving like a high school junior again. Um, but
I, Look, if you want to go with him to prom, you can take him to prom.
yeah, I
It's
won't get in the
okay.
way. Yeah. He-
By the
Uh,
way, that is the final line in the original trilogy. He's my brother.
there you go. Confused happiness when she kisses him here.
and
I
He's
then
just
like, wait,
I
what?
love that little bit of acting.
and then Wicket jumps in and C blocks him. So
Yeah.
it's. I didn't swear, Dave.
Well,
Um,
I mean, what was Han gonna do? Take her right there? I mean, come on, man.
if we,
There they go.
all
Yay.
right,
It's
so
all
now,
G-rated. It's all happy.
all right, so
Everybody's happy.
more controversy. Um, I will say this: I am not. I'm neither anti Yub Nub nor anti new song in the special edition. I kind of agree with the choice that they made with John Williams in the special edition music. That being said, I like Yub Nub. Um,
My
but
my wife has very strong feelings on the matter. Yub Nub is superior and always will be, and that it was a mistake for them to ever change it. And I think that it is a darn catchy song.
yeah,
Like I hate that it went away. Um,
I will say
but
this,
again,
however.
like I see both sides of the issue. I'll say that.
I will say this. It made a little bit of sense to me, even though it all sticks out because it just looks weird. But Tatooine, Bespin, and and
Coruscant.
Naboo and
Oh,
Coruscant, all those celebrations, that's cool. I wish they would have made it fit within the aesthetic of Return of the Jedi a little bit more. However, that being said, at the end of Rise of Skywalker, it made no sense.
It made less sense than it made here. I They could have done this with Yub Nub though. Like if we're honest, if we're being honest with ourselves,
Yeah,
like
it's
I don't know that you could.
I'm
I'm gonna push back on that just slightly. I mean, first, I love Yub Nub. Don't get me wrong, and I think Yub Nub in the original version of this movie, perfect works because your focus is just solely on the
on
party on
Endor,
Endor.
right?
That's it. And you've spent fine time with the Ewoks. So the moment you take it into a
I
intergalactic or
agree,
galactic celebration, you want it to seem a bit grander, a bit more grandiose, because
and
this
it
is
becomes
the fall of, yeah,
it's a heavier story now that we have episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and so the music is a little bit more
okay,
reflective, a little bit more, yeah, not as celebratory as much as relief. Um, and so I agree with you. The fact that if it was just if we didn't see all of the um, other shots, then Yub Nub, yeah, makes sense because it's Ewoks singing about we saved Endor. Yay.
yeah, and
my last word on it, I think you could have made it work because like again, like maybe you take the lyrics out, you know, and so you don't you fade the lyrics out. You bump up the orchestral arrangement
So let's
and you rework it
you could have you
slightly.
could have
But
you
what
could
I'm
have
saying
meshed you
is
could
like
have you could have
Yub
morphed
Nub
from one to the
is
other
I
probably.
Yub
Let's
Nub is
let's
iconic.
start real quick.
Iconic.
I'm sorry, we're at the end. Well, let's forget Yub Nub from now on because we got to talk about the more controversial thing, and that
I'm Hayden Christensen.
is Anakin's Force Ghost.
Yeah.
Um, and I think this needs to be a separate episode at some point about the Force and Force ghosts and stuff like that, because Luke sees, and I've said it on this podcast before, Luke sees, Obi-Wan as he knew him. He sees Yoda as he knew him. So Sebastian Shaw should be at the end of this movie. That's how Luke knows him. He never knew Hayden Christensen's, Force ghost. So that's why I had no problem with Ewan McGregor's voice talking to Rey through the Force, because that was Obi-Wan at one point. She knew nothing of Obi-Wan. It was just of him in one version of time. But anyway, the Force ghost, it bothered. I don't know. So do you think Sebastian Shaw or do you think Hayden Christensen?
I think if you're doing Hayden, you should have done Ewan. If you're considering that the final shot and you're bringing it back to wrap up all 6 movies, if you're doing, and I know it, you're 100% right. If it's either Sebastian Shaw and Sir Alec Guinness with old puppet Yoda, or you go back to the young actors.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's again been my point that if my grandmother's ghost comes to me tonight, it's going to be the Grandma Swoboda that I knew from the years that I was alive. It's not going to be 20-year-old, Angela. It's going to be Grandma Swoboda. I don't know. Dave, where are you? Sebastian Shaw or Hayden Christensen?
I'm completely off topic right now because the Phantom Menace promo just popped up for me. I'm curious, did the Phantom Menace pop up for you guys? Are you watching on Disney Plus?
Oh, I turned it off when we got to the family shot.
No, I mean, what I
It's
got was
interesting that that's the movie that's suggested right after Return of the Jedi, because to me it's the movie that's most like Return of the Jedi, and it's the movie that was released immediately following, well, not immediately following Return of the Jedi, but just kind of a funny thing to me. But like, to answer your question, I don't care. It's not enough of a weirdness to bother me. Ghosts can look however they want. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, to me, it's more along the lines of if you're redoing it to bring, the whole 6 episodes at the time is going to be the 6 episode saga to a conclusion by recalling back the original Anakin Skywalker from the Force. Just bring back Ewan McGregor with his have Ewan McGregor done his mullet too, and they can both him and Hayden can have their mullets as Force ghosts for all time, and that would have been fine. I think it's an interesting choice, but I also think it's also like, you know, it, again, it's George tinkering because, well, what if we do this? Now, what if we do that? So,
Well, thank you for watching Return of the Jedi with us, and let us know what you think if we missed any points or anything like that. And until we hear from you on our social media, Twitter, whatever it's called now, Facebook, wherever or if you see us on the street corner, until then, we will say who dat?
who dat?
And everybody have a great week.
McConkey.